Proton structure. A heuristic approach to explain the ratio between the mass of the proton and the mass of the electron. Part 1. In the beginning of the 20th century, when the investigation of the composition and structure of the atom was in its incipient stage, before the quantum mechanics and the standard model theories were invented, and before the proton was discovered, Arnold Sommerfield wrote, "In the case of the theory of relativity, too, no change in the electric charge enters into question. In consequence of its absolute immutability, the charge, in contradiction to the mass, proves itself to be true substance. The charge, and the mass, are hereby indissolubly associated with one another, the negative charge with the electronic mass, the positive charge with the hydrogen mass. It follows from this logic that the electron, and the proton, are the very important elementary particles of the physical world. It is ironic how, the proton, is not even an elementary particle, in the standard model theory. The most precise measurements of the mass of the proton, and the mass of the electron one can find these days are, the mass of the proton is equal with 1.67262219, multiplied by 10 to the power minus 27, kilogram. And the mass of the electron is equal with 9.10938356, multiplied by 10 to the power minus 31, kilogram. Therefore, the ratio between the mass of the proton, and the mass of the electron, a dimensionless number, is equal with 1836.15267595. Have you expected a natural number here? Geometrical arguments, from the geometry of closed packed spheres, justify this result. The measurements of any experiment could be multiple of the square roots of natural numbers. Amazingly, such a relationship can be found between the mass of the proton, and the mass of the electron, 1836.15267595, divided by square root of 7, is equal with 694.0004785. Therefore, this ratio can be written as 694, multiplied by the square root of 7. The approximation is 1 to a million. The mass of the proton is equal with 694, multiplied by the square root of 7, multiplied by the mass of the electron. Is this just an interesting coincidence found by one looking hard for existent, or inexistent relationships among numbers, or is there a physical explanation, and interpretation of this fact? Could this relationship generate a revolution in our thinking about the atom, similar with the revolution, started by the relationship found by Balmer, for the distribution of the hydrogen spectral lines? Remember, Balmer observed that the first four wavelengths of the emission lines of the hydrogen atom, 410 nanometers, 434 nanometers, 486 nanometers, and 656 nanometers, verify a simple equation. Later, Bohr used this formula to develop, and to justify his model of the hydrogen atom, which marks the beginning of quantum mechanics. If you believe that this is just a funny curiosity, you should stop here, and find something better to do with your time. But, if you have the time and courage to follow my train of thoughts, I suggest an adventure into a heuristic approach that could help considering another point of view in explaining and understanding the atom and its parts.